You know, sometimes it's the smallest thing that brings a memory flooding back, like a crack in a dam. Today it was the smell of apple pie. I was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through one of my old recipe boxes, you know the kind, yellowed cards all written in my mother's hand, some with butter stains from years gone by, and there it was. Her apple pie. Cinnamon, nutmeg, a little lemon zest, not too much. The scent filled the house, just like it used to that autumn in Ottumwa, back in '88. Lord have mercy. I hadn't thought about that year in a long, long time. But today, for whatever reason, it came back like it never left. You young folks probably wouldn't understand, but smells, they stick to the soul somehow. One whiff, and you're not just remembering, you're feeling it all over again. I could see the kids, Josh and Megan, sitting on the floor in their pajamas, watching cartoons on that boxy OL TV with the rabbit ears wrapped in foil. I could hear Megan's little giggle, and Josh tapping his spoon against his cereal bowl. And then, just like that, I remembered him, the knock on the door, that envelope, that cold January wind sneaking into my kitchen like it had bad intentions. I'll tell you what, I've lived 72 years, and some memories are sweet as honey. Others, they're like burrs stuck to your dress after a walk through the fields. No matter how long it's been, they scratch at you from time to time. And this one, well, it's one of those. I haven't told many folks about what really happened that winter. Folks just thought he left and I picked up the pieces, and I did, mind you, but it wasn't that simple. No, ma'am. See, I'd already walked away from him once, after years of coming home to silence, lies and nights where I'd cry so quiet the kids wouldn't hear. But what got me, what really near broke me, was what he tried to do after. After the papers were signed. After I thought it was over. That man tried to take my babies. My babies. And not because he loved them like a father should know, but because he wanted to hurt me. And Lord knows, I nearly let fear win. It's funny. I wasn't even planning to talk about all this today. I was gonna bake that pie, put on a little Patsy Cline, you know, crazy, like I always do on quiet afternoons, and just let the house hum. But something about today, I don't know. Maybe it's because Megan called this morning, and I could hear her little one's Logan in the background, and she said, "Mama, I don't know how you did it." And I just smiled and said, "We made do with what we had." But after we hung up, I sat there a long while, and I thought, maybe it's time I finally told the whole story. So, if you got a minute, maybe pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee if you're stubborn like my sister Ruth, and sit with me a while. 'Cause what I'm about to tell you, well, it ain't easy, but it's true. And more than that, it might just be the most important thing I've ever lived through. And let me warn you, it starts soft, but it don't stay that way. So, are you ready to hear what really happened when he tried to take my children? Back in my day, the world just moved slower. Or maybe I was just young and thought I had all the time in the world. I was 22 when I first met him, hair down to my shoulders, skin still freckled from summer, and a heart wide open like the front porch in June. I was living with my mama and daddy on the edge of a Ottumwa little white house with green shutters and a picket fence that never did stand up straight. Daddy was a welder, Mama ran the church bake sales, and I worked part-time at the grocery store, right by the register, wearing my name tag that read, "Ellie, here to help." Lord have mercy, I believed in kindness back then. I thought if you smiled at someone long enough, you could melt any storm in their soul. Life wasn't fancy, but it was full. Sunday dinners with roast and potatoes, choir practice on Wednesdays, sitting on the porch swing with a glass of sweet tea, watching fireflies rise out of the grass like they had secrets to tell. We made do with what we had. Mama used to say, "Ellie, a good pie crust and a soft heart will get you through most things." I didn't know then how much I'd hold on to those words. He came into my life like summer thunder, handsome, loud, unpredictable. He drove a yellow Pontiac and always smelled like motor oil and cinnamon gum. The first time you winked at me, I swear I forgot how to breathe. He had charm, no doubt about it. But charm, I later learned, can be just as slippery as a wet porch step. Back then, though, I didn't see it. I saw possibility. I saw someone who called me darling and said things like, "We'll build our life from scratch, you and me." And I believed him. Lord help me, I did. We got married the next year. Small ceremony, simple dress. My sister Ruth cried through the whole thing. She always said she had a bad feeling. Should have listened. But I was young and stubborn and in love with the idea of love. We moved into a little rental house 3 streets down from my folks. Peeling paint, squeaky screen door, backyard full of dandelions, and I thought it was perfect. That's how we did it in those days. You didn't wait for perfect. You made it perfect. Then came Josh, my sweet boy. Strong lungs, big eyes, always curious. And 3 years later, Megan, soft as a kitten, always humming to herself like she had music inside her bones. Being their mama, well, that changed everything. I thought I knew love when I got married, but holding those babies, that's when I understood it. The kind of love that's stitched into your bones. The kind that keeps you up at night worrying if they're warm enough or if they're gonna have good hearts. Back then, I still believed that people could change if they were just loved enough. That if I cooked his favorite meals and kept the house clean and never raised my voice, maybe the silence in his eyes would break. But life doesn't work like that. Some people wear their pain like armor and no amount of sweetness can peel it off. I was still trying to believe the best in him, even when the lies started. Even when the nights got longer, colder. Even when the distance in our bed could have fit the whole Mississippi River between us. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I didn't see the storm coming. I was too busy making sure the windows were clean and the kids had clean socks and the pie didn't burn. I thought that was enough. I thought that's what love looked like, quiet sacrifice. But that's where the story really begins. 'Cause even when you do everything right, sometimes life just picks a fight with you. And when it does, you either curl up or you stand up. I remember the day clear as a bell. January 17th, 1988. Cold enough to freeze the tail off a brass monkey. Megan had just spilled her orange juice all over the kitchen linoleum, and Josh was trying to build a fort with every cushion in the house. I had a roast in the oven and Patsy Cline playing soft on the radio, humming her heartbreak right into the walls. I wasn't expecting no visitors. But then 3 sharp knocks on the front door. Not the kind of knock you get from a neighbor dropping off muffins. No, this knock had weight, like it came with bad news. I wiped my hands on my apron, peeked out the side window, and saw him, standing there in his heavy coat, breath fogging the air like smoke, and tucked under his arm, a manila envelope. My heart didn't just beat faster, it dropped. I couldn't tell you why right then, but I knew. Some part of me knew. That was the moment. The moment everything started to shift under my feet. I opened the door just a crack. He didn't say a word, just held out the envelope with that same half-smile I'd once fallen for, now empty as a dry well. "You've been served," he said, like he was offering me a plate of cookies. And then he turned and walked away, boots crunching on the snow like nothing had happened. I just stood there holding that envelope like it might bite me. I didn't open it right away. I waited until the kids were down for their nap. I sat at the kitchen table with my cup of coffee gone cold, hands trembling like I'd just come in from the cold myself. And when I finally slid that paper out, Lord, it was like someone sucker punched me. Full custody. He was petitioning for full custody. of my babies, claiming I was unstable, unfit, emotionally unreliable. Lies dressed up in legal words. Words written by someone who'd never folded a onesie at 2 a.m. with tears in her eyes. I couldn't breathe, not at first. I just kept whispering no to myself like I could make it not true. And then I picked up the phone and called Ruth. Now my sister Ruth, she's a firecracker. Always has been. Says what she means and means what she says. I barely got the words out, and she was already starting her car. 30 minutes later, she was at my door with a casserole, a box of tissues, and a plan. We're not letting that man take your kids, Ellie, she said. Not without a fight. The next day we sat down with Pastor Henry from our church. He was a kind man, gentle eyes, always smelled like pipe tobacco and peppermint. He listened, really listened, and then he said something I've never forgotten. He looked me straight in the eye and said, Ellie, I've seen a lot of storms in my time, but God don't give storms to the weak. He gives 'em to the women who know how to anchor down. I just nodded, though my insides felt like they were made of dust. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there listening to the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock, the soft breaths of my children through the cracked bedroom door. I thought about that envelope sitting on the counter, about the courtroom ahead, about how the man I once loved was now trying to gut me with paper and ink. That was the moment I changed. Not all at once. Not like a switch, but like embers catching fire. I wasn't just a mama anymore. I was a protector. And no one, not even him, was gonna take my babies from me without seeing just how strong a mother's love can burn. After that envelope landed in my hands, nothing felt the same. The days got heavier, like someone had stacked wet blankets on my chest. I still got up, packed lunches, braided Megan's hair, helped Josh with his spelling, but everything felt sideways. It's hard to explain unless you've lived it. You're doing all the same things, but inside, your heart's screaming every second of the day. The first court letter came 2 weeks later. He'd hired a fancy lawyer from Des Moines. I remember looking at that letterhead, feeling like a nobody. Like maybe they were right. Maybe I was just some tired woman with too many casseroles in her freezer and not enough money in her purse. I'll tell you what, I had never felt so small. I knew I loved my kids more than life itself, but would that be enough in a courtroom full of suits and sharp words? And it wasn't just the legal fight. It was the whispers. You know the kind. At church, at the grocery store, even at the kids' school. Poor Ellie, they'd say with their heads tilted just so. Must have done something to make him want full custody. Or worse, maybe the children would be better off with their father. Land sakes alive, those words stuck to me like burrs. And every time I walked into a room, I wondered who was looking at me with pity and who with judgment. There were days I didn't even want to leave the house. Days I sat on the floor of the laundry room, pretending I was sorting socks just so the kids wouldn't see me crying. Nights I'd lie awake listening to the furnace hum, wondering how close we were to losing everything. The worst part wasn't even the fear, it was the shame. I kept thinking maybe it was my fault. Maybe I should have stayed, tried harder, been quieter, prettier, more patient. Maybe then he wouldn't be coming after the kids. Ruth kept showing up. Bless her. She'd knock on the door with a pie or a folder full of notes and court dates. We're gonna get through this, she'd say, firm like a woman who's buried storms before. But even with her there, I felt like I was drowning. I started questioning every move I'd ever made. Should I have waited longer to leave him? Should I have told more people what was really going on behind closed doors? Should I have written down every late night, every time he didn't come home? And yet, in the middle of all that noise, there was a still, small ache. Not for him, no, that ship had sailed, but for what I thought we were gonna have. The life we never built. The family that cracked wide open. That ache, it was a quiet kind of grief. The kind you don't have a funeral for, but it buries something all the same. The real twist of the knife came when he showed up to the first hearing in a press suit, smiling like he was at a reunion. The judge shook his hand. Everyone called him Mister. And there I was, with borrowed heels and a folder full of bills and coloring book pages the kids drew. That's when I knew this wasn't gonna be fair. This wasn't gonna be kind. And if I wanted to keep my children, I'd have to become someone I hadn't been before. Someone louder. Someone braver. But I was scared. Lord, I was scared. What if I wasn't enough? What if love, the quiet, steady, pie-baking, bedtime story kind of love, wasn't what the court wanted? I remember it like it was yesterday. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee from a pot that had been burning too long. There were papers rustling, a secretary tapping her pen, somebody coughing down the hall. But inside me, silence. Absolute ringing silence. I was standing outside the courtroom in that too-tight blazer Ruth had lent me, holding my breath, and a handful of photos of the kids from their last birthday. Megan with frosting in her hair, Josh blowing out candles like he had 100 wishes. My hands were shaking, my knees too, but I made them stay locked. I had to. And then the door opened. My lawyer, bless his heart, fresh out of law school, and trying his best to look down and said, "You ready, Miss Ellie?" I nodded, but I wasn't. Lord knows I wasn't. The courtroom was too cold, too bright. He was already sitting there. My ex, his hair slicked back, smile plastered on like he was at a job interview. And beside him, that woman. The one I didn't even know about until 3 months after the divorce. She was young, polished, wearing lipstick the color of cherries in July. And then I saw it. She was holding my daughter's mitten in her lap. One of the red ones Mama had knitted. Megan's little hands used to disappear into those. I felt the air leave my lungs. And that's when time stopped. I swear to you, I looked up at the clock above the judge's bench, and it had frozen, hands stuck at 9:47. The world just held its breath. I couldn't hear the lawyers, couldn't hear the judge. All I could hear was my own heart pounding, wild and terrified like a trapped bird. And in that frozen second, I saw it, the truth, plain and cruel. He didn't want them because he loved them. He wanted them to win, to punish, to make me small again. And maybe worst of all, he wanted someone else to raise my babies. Someone who didn't know the song I sang to them when they were sick. Someone who didn't know how Josh liked his sandwiches with the crusts cut off, or how Megan needed her light left on at night. Someone who didn't love them like I did. That was the moment I broke. Not loud, not with drama, just inside. Quiet, like snow falling heavy in the woods. I sat there, not breathing, not moving, and I thought, this is it. This is the part of the story where I lose them. And then, something rose up in me. Slow, but strong, like roots cracking through cement. A voice not mine, not Ruth's, not the pastor's. Just a voice inside that said, stand up, speak up. Don't let this be how it ends. And I did. When it was my turn, I stood. My voice shook, but I told that courtroom what it meant to be a mother. Not in legal terms, but in truth. I told them about the nights I'd rocked them to sleep. About reading this same bedtime book every single night because Josh couldn't fall asleep without it. About stretching $10 to feed 3 mouths and still making it taste like Sunday supper. And when I finished, the judge just stared at me. And I waited, still frozen, still stuck at 9:47. After the courtroom cleared and the papers were signed and stamped, I walked out into the parking lot and didn't even know where I'd parked. The cold hit my face like it was reminding me I was still here, still breathing. Ruth was behind me, talking about something. Bless her, probably trying to fill the silence, but I couldn't hear a word of it. Everything sounded like it was underwater. The noise, the cars, her voice, all distant. I just stood there for a minute, staring up at the gray sky like maybe it'd give me an answer. But skies don't talk. Not when you need 'em to. We'd won, I guess. That's what the paper said. Full custody granted to me. But I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt scraped out, hollow, like someone had taken a big wooden spoon and scooped all the hope out of me. I went home that night, tucked the kids into bed like always, and then just sat on the couch. No TV, no radio, just me and the soft creak of the house settling. It was the loneliest I'd ever felt in my life. There's a kind of silence that comes after a storm. Not peace, not relief, just silence. The kind that makes the ticking of the clock sound like thunder. I kept expecting to feel proud, brave, triumphant, even. But I didn't. I just felt tired, bone tired, like all my years had caught up with me at once and sat on my chest. The hardest part wasn't what had happened, it was what hadn't. He didn't fight back after the ruling, didn't call, didn't write, didn't ask to see the kids. Just disappeared, like a bad dream you're not sure was real. And the truth is, that hurt more than any courtroom ever could. 'Cause deep down, some small, foolish part of me still hoped he'd turn around. Say sorry. Try. Be better. But he didn't. And that part of me had to die quietly. I buried it somewhere between the laundry and the late-night dishes. No ceremony. Just gone. And the kids? Well, they were too young to really understand. They just knew Daddy wasn't around anymore. Josh got quiet for a while. Drew a lot of monsters. Megan started sleepwalking. I'd find her standing in the hallway, humming to herself with her eyes half shut. I'd scoop her up, carry her back to bed, and whisper, "Mama's here," over and over. For her and for me. Church was different too. Folks meant well, but you could see it in their eyes. Like they didn't know whether to pat me on the back or pray for me. I stopped going for a while. Just couldn't stand the feeling of being watched, judged, pitied. I started sitting out on the porch instead, listening to the wind blow through the trees, trying to make sense of a world that didn't make sense no more. I wish I could tell you I bounced right back, that I found my strength and stood tall the next day. But that ain't how it went. It was slow, real slow, like learning to walk again with one leg shorter than the other. I went through the motions, woke up, made oatmeal, brushed hair, kissed foreheads, but there was a fog around everything, like life was happening behind a pane of glass I couldn't break through. I wasn't the same woman anymore. The Ellie who believed in second chances and silver linings, she got lost somewhere between heartbreak and survival. I didn't trust easily, didn't laugh as quick. And the mirror? Well, the woman staring back wasn't soft and hopeful anymore. She was tired, quiet, and waiting on something. I just didn't know what. It didn't happen all at once. Lord knows nothing ever does. But looking back now, I think it started one afternoon in the laundry room. Funny, isn't it? After all that drama and heartbreak and courtroom dread, the moment that gave me my first taste of new breath came not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with a sock. One tiny pink sock. I'd been folding laundry, like I always did, with the radio humming some old Glenn Campbell tune in the background. The kids were in their rooms, Josh tinkering with a flashlight, Megan coloring quietly. I was standing there, surrounded by little piles, towels, jeans, pajamas, and there it was, a single pink sock. Megan's. The match was nowhere in sight, and something about that just broke the spell. I picked it up, held it in my hand, and instead of feeling tired, I felt something else. Something warm, like a flicker. A tiny, stubborn little spark in the cold fireplace of my heart. I laughed. Just a little. The first real laugh in weeks. And I thought to myself, you're still here, Ellie. You're still standing, girl. That laugh didn't solve anything, but it cracked the door open. The next week, I baked cookies for the neighbor's boy. He'd been struggling in school, and his mama, a young thing, always looking frazzled, was barely holding on. I saw her trying to drag in groceries with a baby on her hip, and I remembered being her once. So I showed up with a warm batch of chocolate chip, knocked on her door, and just smiled. She cried, right there on her porch. And in that moment, I realized maybe what I'd been through could be useful. Maybe surviving wasn't just about me. Maybe it was meant for something bigger. Ruth came over that Sunday with a box full of church newsletters and asked if I'd help put together care baskets for the widows group. Normally, I'd have made an excuse. But that day, I said yes. We sat at my kitchen table, wrapping up jars of jam and little tea bags with twine, talking about everything and nothing. The house didn't feel so quiet then. It felt lived in, full of life again. The kids started sleeping better. Josh smiled more. Megan sang to herself again while she played. One night she crawled into my lap, looked up at me, and said, "Mama, we're okay now, huh?" And I kissed her forehead and said, "We are, baby. We are." And I meant it. Bit by bit, day by day, the pieces started coming back together. Not the way they were before, no. That version of life was gone. But something new, and better in some ways. Quieter, wiser. I stopped waiting for someone to fix it all. Stopped looking for the old Ellie. I let myself be who I was now, a little more weathered, a little more tired, but still here. Still useful. Still needed. I even pulled out Mama's old recipe box again. The one I hadn't touched since the custody fight. I ran my fingers over those cards like they were sacred scrolls, wrote down my own recipes beside hers, making room for both our stories. I guess that's what second chances really are, not going back, but building forward, brick by shaky brick. You know, when I think back on all those years, the sleepless nights, the courtrooms, the pink sock in the laundry room, and the fire that tried its best to take me down, I don't feel anger. Not anymore. I don't even feel bitter. Just still, like a pond after the wind dies down. And I think that's what time does, if you let it. It don't erase the pain, but it teaches you how to live beside it. How to carry it without letting it weigh you down. There was a time I thought survival meant getting through the hard parts without falling apart. But now I know different. Surviving, real surviving, means falling apart when you have to and rebuilding anyway. It means crying in your laundry room and still making dinner. It means feeling like a failure and still tucking in your babies like you're the queen of the world. It means not waiting for someone to come rescue you, but learning to row your own boat, even if you ain't never touched an oar in your life. If you told me back then that one day I'd be sitting on this porch with grandbabies Logan in the background and my Megan Callan every Sunday just to check in, I wouldn't have believed you. Back then, all I could see was the hole in my life. But life don't leave holes forever. It grows around them, makes space for light in between the cracks. I used to think my job was to be everything for everyone. Perfect mama, perfect wife, perfect picture. But you know what I've learned? That kind of perfection will break a woman clean in two. Real strength ain't about being unshakable. It's about being movable, but not gone. About bending, but not breaking. It's about standing in the storm with soaked hair and shaky knees and saying, "Not today. Not my babies. Not my soul." And maybe that's what I'd tell someone like you, someone watching, listening, maybe facing their own storm. I'd say, stop waiting for the fear to go away. It won't. Not all the way. But you move forward anyway. You open the door. You speak the truth. You hold your babies tight, or your dreams tight, or your own hand if that's all you've got. And you walk, even if it's just to the next breath. I'm not the woman I was at 22. And thank God for that. She was sweet and soft and didn't know how strong she'd have to be. But I love her for trying. I love her for believing. And I love this woman now, this wrinkled, tea-drinking, storytelling version of myself who knows what it cost and still says, I'd do it all again to keep the ones I love safe. So here's what I know, from one tired heart to another. Life ain't fair, but it's still good. People disappoint you, but some will surprise you. And love, the stubborn, quiet, everyday kind, will save you in the end. So now you know. Not just the court papers or the cold nights, or the way a woman can lose and find herself in the same breath, but the whole of it. The long days, the pink socks, the fear, the fire, the quiet grace that came after. And maybe you're sitting there now, thinking it's just one woman's story. But it's not, darling. It never was. This ain't just about 1988, or a man who walked out, or the fight I fought with a trembling heart. This is about you too. Because one way or another, every single soul walks through fire at some point. And when they do, they have to decide, will it burn me down or light me up? I never thought I'd tell this story out loud. Not like this. Not with my hands folded and my voice a little shaky and the wind blowing soft through the porch screen. But here we are. You and me. You, listening on that end. Maybe with coffee in your hand, maybe with tears in your eyes, and me. Just an old woman with a story and a heart full of breathing scars. You see, I used to believe that time healed all wounds. But now I think, time don't heal. It softens. It smooths the sharp edges just enough that you can carry them without bleeding all over everything. I still think about him sometimes, not with hate, not even with sorrow anymore. Just wonder. I wonder if he ever looks back. If he remembers the smell of apple pie in our kitchen. The way Megan used to hum while she colored. The feel of Josh's hand in his on the walk to school. Sometimes I catch myself looking out at the road, and for just a second, I think, maybe today he'll pull up. Maybe today he'll remember. I know he won't, but it's funny with the heart still whispers in the quiet. You know, people ask me now, Ellie, would you do it all again? And I say, yes. Every last bit. Even the tears. Even the silence. Because it brought me here, to this porch, to this peace, to the Sunday calls from Megan and the grandbabies spilling juice on my rug. It brought me to myself. And maybe that's what real strength is. Not never falling, but rising again with grace you didn't even know you had. So now I ask you, sweetheart, what about you? What pain are you carrying that you've been too scared to set down? What fire have you walked through that left you smoking, but standing? What love have you lost, and still look for out the window on quiet days? And tell me honestly, do you believe real love should always come back? Even if it's changed? Even if it's late? Because some nights, when the crickets are loud and the sky's just starting to turn that velvet purple, I swear, I feel it again. Not him, exactly. Not the past. But a kindness, a warmth, like the porch light flickering on, even when no one's coming up the steps. And I sit here with my tea, looking out at the dusk, thinking, maybe he remembers. Maybe somewhere in some old drawer, there's still one of Megan's mittens. Maybe he pulls it out sometimes, holds it in his hands, and closes his eyes.